Today I'm going to be talking about the latest prototype of my cone winder. I will be showing you how it works, but before I do that, I want to talk about some of the changes I've been making and just sort of go over how this cone winder works. And then I'll show it in action. I'll start off with what makes this whole cone winder work, and that's this drum here. These drums are actually pretty common in the textile industry. They're often used to make yarn wind back and forth onto a cone like this. It's just the grooves are sort of designed in such a way that the yarn will flow this way and then it turn around and flow back this way. It's actually a pretty clever design. I've talked about these in the past, so I won't go into a lot of detail there, but that's sort of the whole premise of this device. And what the cone does is it just sits on there, and I have a motor that drives the drum, and that will spin the cone, and the yarn winds onto the cone quite evenly. And it's a pretty clever design. It's certainly not the first design I've seen like this. People in the textile industries use sort of very large versions of these all the time. So I just saw those designs and sort of got the inspiration from there. I haven't seen a consumer version of this being done, and that's sort of what I did. I took, these 100-pound steel machines that are just, sitting in factories running all the time. They didn't care about how big or heavy or expensive they were. And I just sort of scaled it down to a size that works well for, most knitters and spinners. And I put in this little key to sort of hold this arm back, just so that when you're working on the drum like this, it just sort of holds the cone up for you, which is pretty nice. Little add-on that I have here. It's a little tight still on this prototype. This prototype is 3D printed. When I go to manufacture it, I'll definitely be doing it injection molded like I have in past projects. This is another little thing that I added. I'll put this back up. So what I found was that actually getting the yarn like this onto the drum was kind of a little painful. So let's get this so it shows in the video. All you have to do with this little tool is you sort of stick it through there, and then it pulls the yarn through, and then you can easily put it onto the cone like this. So that just sort of helps you out, and I just have a convenient little pocket on the bottom where it can be stored. Also on this side are some controls. This is a dial that controls the speed. This is just an on-off switch. On the underside, I've been working on this design a lot and how to sort of hold this yarn guide secure, because it is quite long. As you can see here, there's actually a lot of levering action here. And I got these metal brackets because they were really inexpensive, but I'm not really happy with how it holds it yet. So I think I'm going to have to create sort of a custom plastic brace that I screw on down here, and that'll definitely hold it. I just was trying to avoid that because it's the most expensive option. I have to create a custom mold for it and things, but I do think it's probably going to be necessary, because I think this piece, I want this to be really well held in place, and I want it to be removable, because it would be a pain to ship, a box that could just hold this whole thing. It'll make shipping a lot less expensive if I can detach the arm and have the user easily attach it. So that's one change I'm definitely making in the next version. And then otherwise down here, there's not too much happening. There's the circuit board, and this is the speed control. This is the on-off switch. The motor's over here. It's all pretty basic stuff. I do have one concern yet. So this hinge has a spring in it, which is great because it sort of holds it in place. And that's also why I have this little key here to sort of hold it up, because otherwise it'll go down. So like if I don't have that, it flops down. So that's sort of why that's there. But it doesn't really push hard enough, and I've talked about getting a stronger spring here, and I just don't know that that's going to be practical, just because of how the lever forces are working here. So the reason I want more force here is because sometimes when you're starting out, there's not too much friction here and things will spin. So I could look into getting a cone that's a little bit more rubbery, and that might solve the solution. Another possible solution would be to add a little bit of weight to this cone. That's generally what they do in the industrial versions. This whole arm and everything holding the cone here is usually made out of, steel, which makes it really heavy, and that completely solves the problem. But most of my parts here, except for the bearings, are all plastic, and that's to, keeping it light, make shipping cheaper. It's also much cheaper to produce and sell this. I haven't figured out a final price, but I'm trying to keep this around $200. So in order to hit that price point, I have to keep most of the parts plastic like this. And they work great except for the very starting off part. And I'm sure I'll be able to solve it and make it better, but I just sort of want to point this out because if anybody has any ideas, I'd be interested. I think my major ideas right now are to make this a little bit more rubbery, but that limits the materials I can make my cones out of, and I want to make sure that these cones are very low cost. And then the other option is to add some weight. I could come up with some way of weighing this bar so that it's a bit heavier. That would increase shipping a little bit, but it wouldn't be too bad, and that would also solve the problem. I'll show you sort of how this is all working in a little bit when I'm demonstrating the machine winding yarn onto a cone. Okay, so when setting this up, just put it through the gauge there, and I mentioned that there's this little hook here, so I generally hold this, stick this through here, and hook the yarn. Then you can pull it through. Then at this point, you'll just attach the yarn to the cone like this. And we'll put the cone down. So we'll just start it off nice and slow. And you can sort of see how it does slip a little bit in the beginning. This cone actually seems to handle it a little bit better than my past ones, but and that's probably because it has a little texture, but I do think that's, as I discussed earlier, that's something I'm going to have to work on improving. And this is at a nice slow speed. Now I'll show you it at a faster speed. And from here we can go up to full speed. And that's the end of it. So here I can show you what a cone looks like. I mean, it'll definitely hold a lot more than this. I've done a previous video about how much it can hold. It's about a pound, one of these cones. So hopefully this was useful, and definitely leave feedback if you have any suggestions on things that I should be looking to do on future prototypes of this. I think we're most of the way there, but it's definitely got several things I'm going to be working on for the next version of the prototype. Thanks for watching.